Right, we're here today at a very cold Hallcroft Fishery near Retford. It's a venue we've spent all winter here fishing. As you can probably see over my shoulder, the vast majority of the complex is actually frozen over. We've literally driven round as it was coming daylight, and we found a spot, this corner here, that's actually free from ice. Unfortunately, it's going to limit, the method and the range that we're going to be fishing today. But obviously you can probably tell how cold it is. It's going to be the perfect opportunity to show you just how I approach matches in winter when you're really just fishing for bites. So we're over on Bridgepool. My kit is already set up, so I'm just going to quickly talk you through the baits that we use to attack this sort of a venue at this time of year, show you the tattle, so I'll see you down at the peg. Well, as you'd expect, the water temperature is really cold, and it's really quite clear as well. So initially, really, we're just going to be fishing for bites. I'm a big believer in keeping things simple, especially during winter. I don't like to feed too many baits because I don't want to give the fish too many options. So my bait tray today kind of reflects that. Pellets can be very good on here throughout the summer months, and we've used them a little bit before Christmas. But this time of year, and on sessions like today, I won't be feeding any pellets purely because you can't really fish with micro pellets on the hook. So the last thing I really want to do is put a bait like that in that the fish might get preoccupied with when I'm obviously going to be fishing with other things on the hook. So I've got a little bit of bloodworm and joker left over from a match last weekend. I don't expect to be using the bloodworm, but the joker, I'm going to be feeding that through the ground bait. Hopefully that'll just help trigger a few bites. One of the best baits on here has been all winter, hook bait wise, has been pinkies. So I've got some of those, various colours, really just for the hook. I will be feeding 2 or 3 of those each cast, but especially the fluoros can really get you a quick bite, especially from roach and skimmers. I've got some dead red maggots that are fantastic bait all year round, and obviously because they're dead, if the fish take quite a while to arrive, which they often can do at this time of year, obviously because they're dead, they'll just lay on the soft bottom and just lay in wait basically for the fish to arrive. That really is as simple as it is today. That obviously then just leaves the ground bait. I'm using Pro Feeder Dark. I've sieved it off a little bit so it's nice and fine. It's obviously a dark mix, as you can see, and that is it. That is just as simple as I think you need to be at this time of year. And what we can do is just regulate what we're going to feed as the session goes on. The initial plan is to feed a short line at 14 metres. I'm going to leave that for certainly the first hour, with the hope that some better skimmers will settle on that for later on in the session. But I'm going to kick off as far out as I can go, slightly to one side, slightly offset at 20 metres, that's the edge of the ice. I'd like to go a little bit further, but the ice is not going to let us do that. So I'm going to kick off on that line, so I'm going to feed that very sparingly at the start and just feel my way into the session that way. So I'm just going to feed the 2 swims now, and then I'll give you a quick rundown on the type of kit that I'm going to be using. So to kick off both swims, I'm going to be feeding a bit of joker. So what I'm going to do is I'm not using any leam, I'm just using ground bait today. So what I'm going to do is just mix some of the joker into the ground bait. The ground bait separates it into one little corner of the bowl. And on this longer line, I'm just going to kick start with 2 small feederfuls. Because I'm starting on this line, I don't want to feed too much because I don't want to be waiting ages for a bite when I start on it. So I'm just going to feed 2 feederfuls. Bang in line with that caravan. It's slightly offset from my shorter line because you don't want to be reeling the feeder over that short line. It's not too deep here, so just going to give that a couple of seconds just to make sure it's fully wet and emptied. The next one I'm going to just put 4 or 5 pinkies in. These fluoro pinkies are really, as you can see, the fluoros, so they're really bright and they really stand out well in this clear water. Can sometimes make all the difference. So I'm just putting 2 in on this line and that's it. I'm then going to feed my short line. This is an 18-gram cage feeder, which is just nice at this range. I'd like to fish a bit further out, but I can't obviously because of the ice. Okay, so that's 2 gone in there. So what I'm going to do now is with a slightly larger feeder, I'm going to feed my short line, and because I don't plan on going on this line for at least an hour, I'm going to put a little bit more feeding on it. So I've got some joker, got some dead reds I'm going to put in there as well. And this is clipped up at 14 metres. which is a typical sort of pole range, was what they fish on here with, and that's why it's a good line to feed, because that's where the fish get used to the feed going in. And I'm feeding that straight in front of me, 12 o'clock. And I'm going to put 4 feederfuls in on that line. Right, well, as you can imagine, this time of year when you're just fishing for bites, your tackle's got to kind of reflect that, and we don't know what to expect here. There could be some, you know, quite easily be lots of small roach there could be some skimmers there, we don't know. There could even be some carp sitting there, we don't know. But its target today is just to trigger some bites, catch some fish, whatever they are. We expect them to be silverfish, and as you can imagine, the tackle that you use or you intend to use to target these fish have got to be soft and forgiving rods. The ones I'm using today are the Horizon Slims. I'm going to be using the 3.3 metre version on the shorter line. It's a lovely soft rod. It's a rod that we've used all the way. I've used them for quite a while now, and especially this time of year when you're fishing with small hooks, light baits, and you're fishing for soft mouth fish like skimmers and bream, you obviously want to make sure you land every single fish, because bites are obviously at a premium. So a nice, soft, forgiving rod will obviously help you land those fish. I'm using the 3.3 metre version on the short line, like I said. That's coupled with an Aquas 4000 reel. On the longer line, I'm using the same rod, the same model rod, but the 3.5 metre version, and again, that's coupled with an Aquas 4000 reel. Free running rigs are fishery rules here, so it's just a free running cage feeder approach, and that's an identical rig on both lines. I've just fed the swim, so I'm just going to kick off on that longer line, like I said, just kick off with a single hook bait. So I've just got to put my hook length on, and hopefully there's going to be some fish out there waiting for us. I'm kicking off with 0.11 hook length, and that's to a size 18 hook. I like to fish and start off normally with a 50 centimetre hook length, but at this time of year for this sort of fishing, I think 30 centimetres is about right. Starting with a single pinky on the hook, a live pinky. So let's see if there's any fish out there waiting for us. Right, well, as you know, I didn't feed a hell of a lot on this line, just 2 small feederfuls, a little bit of joker in there, maybe 4 or 5 pinkies. At this time of year, just to kick off, I only really start on probably 3-minute casts is about right when I'm fishing with worm and joker and small baits. The reason for that is because if there are any small fish out there, I don't like to leave a single pinky out there too long on the first cast. So I'll just have 3 or 4 casts like that to start with. And then if I don't get any sort of indication, I'll then start leaving it longer and just monitor it after that on each cast. Well, I've had 5 casts now. I've had pinky on the hook. I'm just going to try tipping it off with a bloodworm now, but I haven't had any indications as yet. So what I'm going to do is now, they were 3-minute casts. I'm now going to go on to something like probably a 6-minute cast. Just leaving it twice as long, just to see if that's going to give the bait more time to be out there for a fish to find it. Well, that's been in bang on 2 minutes that. I didn't move the feeder at all. I've just left it where it was when it went in. At about 11 or 12 casts now altogether. I'm still on that longer line. It's really encouraging to get a sign so early on. I had a couple of little indications. It didn't quite develop. It's only small fish, but we're going to net it, so we don't know how hard it's going to be. Good to make sure. little skimmer. But no, I just had a couple of little indications and it didn't quite develop. And the great thing with a rod rest like this is that I was able to just move the rod slightly towards the feeder, which meant the tip went slack again. And sometimes that just frees up a little bit of the tension out of the line. It just helps the bite develop a bit more. The bait's well down, so we really wanted that. Lovely little skimmer. Great to get one so early on in the session, really encouraging. Let's pop him in the net. Let's see if there's some of his mates out there waiting.
Fed up with your point of view. This just feels like deja vu. It's about time for something new. It's our time, we're coming through. Fed up with your point of view.
Well, that was a better fish. It had only been in about 2 minutes. Really, really encouraging to get bites so quickly. So what I'm going to do is just keep on this long line. We're still resting that short line and just keep monitoring each cast and see if any more bites develop. Completely different bite, that one, much quicker, almost like a rattle. It could be a roach, this one. Let's get him netted, let's make sure. It is. Lovely dumpy little roach. Lovely little roach, really welcome. On a pinky, just tipped off with 2 bloodworm that time. Like I said, the bite was completely different, obvious roach bite. It's like a little block of ice, it's freezing.
It's my time for something new. It's our time, we're coming through. We're taking over. So you best move over before you get rolled over. Kick on, we're taking over. Kick on, we're taking over. Yeah, we're taking over. Yeah, we're taking over. Girls, we are taking over.
Well, the tips that I've selected for today they're both an ounce, obviously on the short line and the longer line. It's important to use a softer tip as what you can get away with, as you can imagine, because the softer the tip, the more it's going to emphasise the bites that you get, and you're going to be able to see more indications with a softer tip. One of the things to take into consideration is how far out you're actually fishing. As you can appreciate, that the further out you cast, the more line or braid you've got out there, so there's more line there for any sort of toe or anything to pick up on, and that's obviously going to affect how far around your tip bends. This venue doesn't allow braid, so we're using mono, which is obviously a thicker diameter than braid. So as you can appreciate, whatever diameter line you're using, the thicker it is, the more toe it's going to pick up. So you need to think about that when you're thinking about what size and what strength tip to select. An ounce is about right today. I mean, believe it or not, even though most of the lake is still frozen, the tip is actually still bent round. You know, I haven't set the tip in that position, that was slack. So you know, there's still even a little bit of toe or movement or whatever you want to call it affecting that tip. And they're the things that you need to think about. And that's an indication now. I'd say that's on, and that's probably a skimmer judging by the bite. Single white pinky. Tipped off with 2 bloodworm. That was a really slow nodding kind of bite. One where you're pretty sure they're on. Obviously with a thicker tip you wouldn't see those little indications. But that obviously is just kind of, it's an issue about reading and seeing your bites, not as regards picking up. Obviously if you see a bite and an indication earlier, that doesn't mean to say you've got to pick up on that indication, but it just means you see the start of the bite earlier. And if you want to let it develop, then that's entirely up to you when you actually decide to pick up. These are the skimmers that make a big difference on this fishery. You can soon rack up a weight of these. These are the fish that can come in on that close line and you can really put a great weight together of them. especially later in the session. It's freezing cold, as you can imagine. Beautiful looking fish, but they're a wonderful stamp of fish to be catching like this.
Fed up with your point of view. This just feels like deja vu. It's about time for something new. It's our time, we're coming through. Fed up with your point of view. This just feels like deja vu. It's about time for something new. It's our time, we're coming through. We're taking over, so you best move over before you get rolled over. Kick on, we're taking over. Kick on, we're taking over. Yeah, we're taking over.
Quite often when it's hard like this, it's the little details, the little changes that can trigger your extra bites and extra fish. One of the funny things is, in winter, that is when I see a lot of people, that's when they are least active. And by that I mean by ringing the changes and things. People just, a lot of anglers just kind of sit and wait and just, they make their mind up, they're going to do this and they're going to sit and wait, and if it goes, it goes. That's fine. You know, there will be days when that works. But quite often in winter, it's the hardest working anglers that are just kind of rotating hook baits. Today, for example, I kicked off with a fluoro pinky. You can see how bright those are. They're a fantastic bait in winter, but I just didn't catch with it. And I didn't get the response I expected. So all I did was I switched to a white pinky, and I didn't get anything at all. But then I went on to white pinky and tipped it off with bloodworm, two bloodworms, and caught straight away. Just little things like that. They're the little things that you can do without actually ruining your swim. By changing your hook baits, you're not spreading bait round the peg, you're not really giving the fish anything extra. You're just trying to find something like a target bait or just something to trigger a fish. It's the same principle when you come to putting bait through your ground bait. Ground bait in itself, I mean, I've won lots of matches in the past just by fishing ground bait on its own through a feeder. Today we've done a mixture of different things because we're trying to work it out and find out what's best. So sometimes just the ground bait on its own is enough to bring fish into a feed area. And the reason why I like doing that is because the ground bait's got the fish there, it's got them interested, and then when they do come to that area, there's only your hook bait there for them to find. So you can catch a lot of quick fish doing that. But just by regulating what you're putting through the feeder, you've got to start putting something in. But like today, for example, we started off feeding and we had a very, very slow, poor response. So days like that, I then cut back on the feed because you don't want to keep, banging loads of feed in there if it's looking like you're only probably going to be fishing for 4 or 5 bites, because the more feed you put out there, the less chance you've got of any fish out there actually finding your hook bait. Well, this is my second cast on this short line and I haven't had a single indication, not even a liner. The way that I feed this line is to put a larger volume of bait in at the start, and obviously the reasoning behind that is basically to put a bed of feed down to give fish a chance to settle over it, so that when you do go on it after a period, hopefully there are some fish settled on it. Like I've just said, I've had 2 casts on it, I haven't had an indication, not even a line bite. Usually if there's any skimmers there or bigger bream, they would show you some sort of a sign. You might not necessarily catch one or want to take your bait, but you'd get some sort of a liner. The important thing is with a line like this is not to keep chasing it and chasing it. The textbook says that a line like this, especially this time of year, can probably be better in the last hour, and quite often it will be. And I've seen numerous occasions where that has certainly been the case. You've gone on the line, the fish have been there, and the tips just kept going round and you've put a weight together. But it's not happened. And on those occasions, you really need to think about it like a margin line when you're fishing for carp. If you go on it, having fed it and prepped it and primed it, if you go on it and the float doesn't go, or the tip doesn't go, don't keep flogging it. You know, you only really want to give it 3 or 4 casts maximum. There are times when that first cast and second cast won't get you a fish. I honestly think that's because the fish have been settled on that bait, and all of a sudden a feeder arriving, I think they just back off it a little bit when they're you know, cautious at this time of year. And that's why quite often, probably the 3rd cast or 4th is when you actually start getting indications. But if you don't get an indication, it means the fish generally aren't there, or they're certainly not feeding. So don't waste too much time on it. 4 or 5 casts and that's it. Put it back down. You've already introduced a bit more bait there as well, and then you can go back onto your longer line, because it's a few minutes since I've been on that, and by going back on that, that's obviously had a rest. But don't keep flogging the line like this if you're not getting any indications. You can just rest it again and come back to it at any stage. Well, that's 5 casts I've had on that short line. I've never had an indication whatsoever, not even a line bite or anything. So rather than just keep flogging it, I'm just going to go back long now for the last half an hour. Hopefully that rest might have done it a bit of good. I guess we'll soon find out.
You wanna know who I came with? You wanna know if we're dangerous? You ain't hanging with no strangers. Do you wanna be famous? You just want the Lambo so you can go fast. You just want the money, man, you just want the cash. You just wanna know if we dangerous. Do you wanna be famous? Do you want a name, man? Do you wanna stress? Do you want a game? Are you gonna play your best? Do you want a paparazzi all at your events? Do you want the IRS checking on your texts? Do you wanna move like celebrity? Do you wanna do?
Well, I've gone back out on that longer line, and I can't believe I haven't had an indication. I thought that little bit of a rest might have helped it, but it obviously doesn't appear as though resting the swim's really working today. There's not much longer of the session left now, so what I'm going to do is, for the last few casts, all I'm going to feed is ground bait. I'm not going to put any bait in the feeder, and just try and winkle out just one more fish before the end. I'm just going to try a brighter colour bait. As you can see, it's going darker now. That's the time of day, and that's what happens in winter. Obviously it's sometimes it gets stronger through the session, sometimes it just gets worse. So I'm going to cut out all the feed, just put ground bait through, put a brighter hook bait on, and just try and nick a final skimmer.
Everything is dope, everything is a placebo. You're leaking money, leaking money. There's cash around, everybody wants it from you. Wake up, take a picture, then you back online. Nobody keep it up like all the time.
Well, there we go. I've got a quick bite. It's not a big fish, but it is a fish. It could be the last one of the session. I think it's one of those skimmers, like what we caught earlier, those 8-ounce fish. Interestingly, it wasn't a shy bite at all. It's sometimes surprising this time of year when the water's really cold and you've waited a long time for a bite. Sometimes you'd expect the bites to be quite shy, quite tentative, but that one was really, really confident. Yeah, it's another skimmer. Lovely stamp fish. Well, I think that's a lovely fish to end on. It's freezing cold, but as I'm holding it, I can feel it freeze my fingers. It's been a rock hard day, as you've seen, but we'll just get the fish out. We'll have a quick look at what we've caught. But it's always enjoyable to catch in conditions like this. Most of the lake is still iced over, even now. Very rewarding though, and hopefully some of the tactics that we've gone through today have been of interest to you. So let's have a look what we've caught. Well, it's been a rock hard day. A lot of the ice is still out there, so you can imagine how cold the water is. Hopefully this session's been of interest to a lot of you. It's just been about how we approach venues like this in winter when it's cold, where you're just fishing for bites, and how you cover your options by fishing different lines We haven't caught on the short line today, we've only caught on the longer line, and that's exactly why you need to cover your options, because sometimes those fish, they're not moving about and they don't come in, or they're staying out in the lake, and that's why it's best just to keep an open mind on all these sessions. We're going to get these fish back now. Thanks for watching. I hope you've picked up some tips and you've just seen the way that we approach these sorts of venues at this time of year. Thanks for watching. This has been another Matrix Mini Masterclass. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, please click like, please comment below and share it. Thanks for watching.